What? Natasha's sudden outburst of anger caused Quentin to furrow his brows. Are you seriously going to turn on me just to protect this boy toy of yours? One reason he wanted to humiliate Dustin so much was that he hated his guts, while the other was because he wanted to gauge Natasha's reaction to the situation. Dustin saved my life, so if you dare so much as lay a finger on him, don't blame me if I flip out on you. Natasha warned Quentin sternly. If not for the fact that he was her cousin, she would have slapped the shit out of him already. Is that so? Quentin snorted as his expression twisted into a scowl. While I can put Tilda Snyder's case aside for now, I'm still very opposed to the fact that you plan to elect him as the chief physician when he doesn't even have the right qualifications for the job. Quentin argued back. Since this was one way of securing power in the company, it was obvious that he wasn't going to let this opportunity slip away so easily. Whether he's qualified or not, it's not up to you to decide, but me. Natasha growled with authority. Everything you own now was given to you by the family, so if you insist on getting in the way of the family's interests, you're not allowed to blame me if I report you to the board when the time comes. Quentin threatened. Do whatever you want, Natasha spat. She wasn't afraid of him in the slightest. Wait. Jessica suddenly spoke up. Eternamax's research document leak isn't a trivial matter, so the next chief physician must be capable enough to mitigate this. I feel Dustin's still too young for this, so that would make Mr. Wangley the most suitable candidate, no? She refused to let a naive child like himself hold such a key position in Harmon Pharmaceuticals. Dustin's medical skills are superb, so I doubt if he'd lose to some dusty old man, Natasha justified confidently. Fine, since you keep insisting that he has great medical skills, then I propose that he beat Mr. Wangley in a medical showdown. Then, we shall see who's the best among them, Quentin suggested, stoking the flames. Natasha couldn't help but furrow her brows as he finished his sentence. Suddenly, she realized that she might have fallen into his trap. How are we supposed to compete then? Dustin suddenly spoke up. Although he wasn't too interested in becoming chief, Quentin's arrogance had rubbed him the wrong way, so he decided to roll along with his plan just to prove him wrong. Competing between medical prowess is just too boring, don't you think, young guns? Why don't we play with poison instead? Mr. Wangley changed the topic out of the blue. Sure, how do you plan to do that? Dustin remained poker-faced. It's simple actually. Each of us will concoct a bottle of poison on the spot and exchange it with one another to ingest. Whoever manages to come up with an antidote to save themselves first will be declared the winner. Sound good? Mr. Wangley proposed. Wait a minute. But what if you can't cure yourself from the poison? Ruth quickly asked. Well, if you fail, then I guess you can either get lucky and survive being a cripple or die a violent death instead. Mr. Wangley guffawed, his eyes gleamed with excitement as he said that. No way. Who the hell goes so far for a duel? What if something goes wrong? Ruth exclaimed in shock. One wrong step, and one could easily get killed. Since we're going to compete with one another anyways, why don't we raise the stakes a little? So, up for the challenge, young man? Mr. Wangley nudged amusedly. Don't fall for his tricks, Dustin. He's obviously doing this just to back you into a corner, Natasha warned in a low whisper. She now suspected that Mr. Wangley wasn't a physician at all but a master of poison. Unlike physicians, who cure diseases and save lives, poison masters do research on the complete opposite spectrum of medicine. For them, they specialized in witchcraft, voodoo, and poison. They had ruthless tactics and strange tricks up their sleeves. If they settled on a competition to battle out their medical skills, then Dustin would stand a pretty good chance of winning. But if they opted to go with a poison concocting competition with a master of poison instead, then it was like they were begging to be killed. I'm giving you one more chance to back out of this, Mr. Boy Toy. If you admit defeat now, you'll be giving up your title of chief physician, and I'll still need you to bow down and apologize to Tilda Snyder's ashes. Quinton spat. Who was this pale-skinned wimp who was bold enough to pick a fight with the great Mr. Wangley anyway? Aren't we just dabbling with some poison? Fine, it's on, Dustin proclaimed. He was not the least bit afraid. Ha, you asked for it. Quinton let out a maniacal laugh as he gazed at the soon-to-be dead man in front of him. To think he had the gall to compete with a Polson master at making Polson. He certainly had a death wish. Are you out of your mind? Dustin? You could deal, Ruth said anxiously. It's not like they have any rivalry between them either, so why does he insist on putting his life on the line like this? She thought to herself. I know full well what I'm doing. Dustin answered nonchalantly. Dustin, are you sure you want to do this? Natasha frowned. He could see the slight worry in those beautiful eyes of hers. She was aware that Quinton was deliberately making things difficult for him, but it wasn't like she could outright stop him either. Don't worry, I'll be fine. You should be worried about them instead. Dustin grinned. In fact, he was not only proficient in medicine but very much a specialist in voodoo magic and poison as well. Less talk, more poison making. Mr. Boy Toy. Quinton urged hurriedly, afraid that he'd chicken out and go back on his word. Wait. Dustin voiced out and raised his hands all of a sudden. I'm all for making poisons, but my only condition is that I need you to be involved in this as well. What are you talking about? Quinton asked in shock, feeling a little uneasy. Didn't you say that you wanted this to be exciting? Later when we're done, why don't you and I test it with our bodies, then leave our lives at the mercy of the Lord? Dustin suggested coolly. Cut the crap. Quinton hollered, and his expression immediately changed. How are you compare your peasant life with mine? Why don't you look at yourself in the mirror for once? Admitting defeat so quickly? If you don't have the balls to take up this challenge, then kneel down in front of me and admit defeat right now. And I'll need an apology too, then I can pretend none of this ever happened in the first place. Dustin taunted. You dash! Quinton stumbled over his words as a burst of anger overtook him in an instant. Would he even have any face left after this if he backed down now? Then again, he was the one with the money and status, so it wasn't like he stood to gain anything from putting his life on the line with a filthy peasant like him. I won't, rest assured, Mr. Harmon. With my skills, I'll make sure that any kind of poison this punk conjures up even hurt you in the slightest, Mr. Wangley announced with conviction. If he were to scan the entirety of South City, he was confident that the only person who was able to top him was Dr. Lyndon Watkins when it came to making poisons. Are you sure about that? Quinton probed, his brows furrowed slightly. Of course. Just take the bet, Mr. Harmon, and I'll make sure to keep you safe from harm, Mr. Wangley declared confidently. Sounds good to me. Quinton shouted and slapped his hands on the table before getting up to his feet. If it's my life on the line you want, Mr. Boy Toy, then it's what you'll get. I'll make sure to accompany you to your last dying breath.